Quazi here. I want to explain a mysterious phenomenon to you that will completely change how you perceive and experience reality. To do this, let's take one of the most famous experiments in quantum physics, the double slit experiment. Now imagine that you have a wall with two narrow slits in it, and you fire tiny particles like electrons towards it, one by one. Now, if electrons are just little solid balls, you'd expect them to pile up behind one slit or the other, like pebbles tossed through two windows. But that's not what actually happened when scientists performed this experiment. Instead, they created a wave pattern on the screen behind, ripples of possibility, almost as if each electron went through both slits at once and interfered with itself. Here's where it gets stranger. The moment scientists set up a detector to watch which slit the electron passed through, the wave pattern collapsed. The electron behaved like a solid particle again, choosing just one path. Simply observing it changed the outcome. This became known as the observer effect, the idea that reality doesn't fully exist in one form until it's actually observed. But it didn't actually stop there. In the 1980s, physicist John Wheeler pushed it even further with a delayed choice experiment. He asked, what if we wait until the electron passes the slits to decide whether or not to observe it? Logic says the electron should have already made up its mind, wave or particle. The results broke every rule. When scientists measured it as a particle, its past behavior lined up as though it had only ever gone through one slit. When they measured it as a wave, its past lined up as it had gone through both. The act of observing in the present appeared to rewrite the past itself. Just think about that. Reality didn't lock in until a conscious choice was made. The past wasn't fixed, it bent itself around the observer and it actually changed. The moment I understood this, my life changed forever. I realized that my past didn't dictate my future because this present moment and my perception was the key that makes the shift happen. When I understood this, I had the best year of my life in 2020, going from freshly graduating college, quitting my soul-sucking job to starting my own business, and in my second year of business in 2020, making $1.2 million. My reality completely shifted. So guys, in today's video, I'm going to share with you how you can shift into the sector of reality that contains all of your desires so you can experience the reality that you want. So with that, let's get started. So the very first thing that we need to understand, there is a script and there's scenery, right? So this is your external world and this is your internal world. Now, why I talk about this is because there's a book called Reality Transurfing, which I believe is one of the greatest books ever written on quantum physics and how it influences the nature of reality. And in that book, there is mention of this concept called alternative space, the space that contains every possible combination of realities that can be manifested. And our only option, only action that we need to take is to choose which reality we want to experience. And the way in which we choose the realities that we want to experience are by the major thoughts and feelings that we entertain, the frequency of thoughts and feelings that we entertain on a day-to-day basis. For example, if you believe money is hard to get and you're the kind of person for whom money is hard to get, then it will be very, very difficult to get. You will resonate at that frequency and at that lifeline. On the other hand, if you believe money is very, very simple and easy to get, then you will resonate at the frequency where money flows to you with effortlessness and ease and you don't experience scarcity, right? So because we keep entertaining scarcity so much, a lot of us do, we attract more and more of it in our lives. So reality gives you more of what you hate and more of what you love. If you hate bills, scarcity, lack, then scarcity, lack, bills is what you'll get and you'll keep staying stuck at a particular level in your life. And if you're someone who has been experiencing one particular pattern, chances are you've been unconsciously resonating at the frequency of that lifeline, okay? So what I mean by that is there is a script, okay? So your internal world is the script that plays. So when you have the predetermined script, for example, a lot of people believe in the fate model that, hey, I was just born in this situation to this family in poverty, and so that is what I will get. However, there's a select few who are able to rewrite that script and their attitude, right? And so when they rewrite that script to say, no, because I was born in this family, in this situation, I must accomplish something great. I am destined to accomplish something great. And actually, those are the people who feel entitled to success like that. They're the ones who actually end up achieving massive success. Okay, I'm still recording. Sometimes the recording turns off. So we have this script that we have accepted. If you, let's say, go into the theater or you're watching a movie, you'll know that there's a set of characters, there's a script that plays, the characters follow that script, and there's a setting in which everything occurs, right? And that is the scenery. So the script determines the scenery. So whatever script I choose, in accordance with that, the scenery I will get. For example, if in my script there is poverty, destituteness, then that is what I will see more and more of in my environment. I'll manifest that in my environment. However, if in my script I see abundance, I see joy, I see peace, I see freedom, then in the external environment, that is what I will attract. Okay? It's as simple as that. It just happens with a delay. Your thoughts of today will manifest tomorrow with a slight bit of delay. Why? Because the nature of reality is inert. It's matter. Whereas thoughts and dreams can be influenced immediately just by conception, it takes a bit of time for them to reflect out in material reality, unless you have the Messiah's mastery over your intentions, right? There are definitely those sages and monks throughout the ages, ancient sages who were able to bend reality, levitate, and walk on water. So it's possible, however, it requires you to develop more mastery over your intention energies, okay? So understand that there is an internal script that determines the external reality. Now, because in this all space or alternative space, there's many different possible sectors of realities that can be manifested, the thing that determines which sector of reality that you manifest is your frequency, right? What determines your frequency? Well, what determines your frequency are the thoughts that you think and the feelings that you feel. The thought-feeling combination can also be called your beliefs. And out of these beliefs, when beliefs are weak, we call them an opinion or an outgoing thought, right? It's just initially you get an opinion, someone says something to you or expresses a particular thought to you, you can choose whether or not to accept it, right? Someone says, hey, in this economy, it's difficult to make money. You can choose to accept it or you can choose to not. When you accept it, it becomes something that you believe in. However, that becomes your worldview. And then when you choose to believe that worldview enough, it eventually becomes your self-view as well, because you try to take action in this world, right? You believe that it's difficult to make money, and then you try to take action to make money, and then you begin to lose confidence in yourself, right? You begin to compare yourself to others who you see are making money, but because your worldview is that of it's difficult to make money, you start to believe I'm not the kind of person who's capable of making money. That's when it's game over. So then that becomes your self-view. And so when beliefs get really, really strong, it becomes convictions. So ultimately, these will evolve to the level of conviction. When it's evolved to the level of conviction, you will no longer question it, you will operate from it. Okay, so we make certain assumptions to make the world simpler so that we can operate from those assumptions, right? If I didn't assume certain things, if I didn't have trust that today I'm going to turn on the ignition in my car and it's going to start up, well, then I wouldn't be able to drive. If I had this belief that if I started my car up, it would explode, then you would never be able to start the car. If I had this belief that, and a lot of hypochondriacs do, that if I stepped outside, I'm going to get sick immediately and I'm going to die, then that's exactly what's going to happen. I'm not going to be able to step out of my house. So without making certain assumptions, I wouldn't be able to live life. It would be difficult to function in life. So we actually do need certain worldviews and self-views to help us function within reality. So the strength of these worldviews and self-views, the convictions that you have about them, is what influences the script that plays, which then ultimately influences the reality that you experience, okay? So now the question is, how do we get to a point where we change these convictions, change our predominant thought energy? Well, what I ask you to think about in this way, in the first place, what made you accept those negative thoughts and feelings that the world is a bad place, etc.? Well, there was a strong feeling associated with it, a strong feeling of fear and a thought, right? So when someone delivered a thought to you, an opinion, expressed an opinion to you, where they said, hey, in this economy, it's really difficult to get wealthy and to make money, and everyone's struggling. What's going to happen? You're going to feel a sense of fear. The feeling is fear, right? In fear, our egos close up, okay? It goes into protection mode. So any negative thought that corresponds with that feeling of fear, it will immediately be accepted as truth. Why? Because the ego's primary goal is to do what? Is to protect, is to stay safe, right? So it doesn't want to take any risk. As human beings, we've been hardwired for loss aversion. We would much rather not lose $100 than make 200, right? So when the feeling corresponds to the thought that's being presented, it is accepted. However, it is very difficult to accept feelings of abundance and the thought that there is enough out there. Why? Because the ego perceives it as a threat. It says, oh, to put myself out there, to take risks to be able to make money, I have to lose the $100 in order to make 200, etc. So only a select few people, aka people who have succeeded, have been able to take those risks, where they've been able to part with money, invest in themselves, take risks to be able to grow. So a thought-feeling combination, if they're congruent, is accepted and accepted as a belief. Then it forms your worldview and your self-view, which influences the script and that particular sector of reality, okay? So in order for you to change that, one main tool that I've always used is visualization, okay? Visualization. So you want to visualize the process and you want to visualize what's known as the goal. What do I mean by that? So in order to accept make a shift to a positive lifeline, you need to have a target, okay? The target that you want to move towards. For example, for me, back in 2019, I always focused on waking up in the mansion in LA next to the partner of my dreams. I lived the life that I want to live, of freedom, have the money, but back then I was broke. And I wasn't broke, I was in a job, I was nowhere near the life that I wanted to live, right? So I wanted to get out of my job, have the life that would actually fulfill me, have the laptop lifestyle where I can live anywhere in the world and make money without needing to be chained, because freedom is one of my core values. And then I realized that how I was thinking and feeling at the time corresponded to the lifeline of work a safe job, get a degree, work a safe job, retire, be safe, stay protected, because my parents were immigrants and they deeply instilled that belief into me that, hey, just be safe, just do something safe, just don't take too much risk, right? So because that belief was instilled within me, I operated from that worldview and that self-view that the rich, the super wealthy, they were either born with special talents or gifts, or they knew someone, right? And I had none of those. And since I operated from that worldview, anytime I thought about doing something risky, it seemed pointless. It's like, why would I do that? I don't have a special talent, or I don't know anyone. So why would I bother trying to start a business or do anything on my own, right? So instead, what I started to do was just focus on, in a way, daydream about what I wanted. Now, when you do this, your thought energy will immediately attune to a different lifeline, right? So right now, you can imagine in the current lifeline that you're moving through, the script that you're moving through, what the end looks like, what the end of this script is, right? So if you're someone who's in a job that you hate, you can possibly imagine what the next 40 years of that job would look like, or staying in this situation would look like. However, you can also imagine if you were to focus on the goal that you want, the thing that you actually want to experience that would make your life a continual vacation, you can also imagine what that would be like. However, what's typical at this point is when you imagine that goal, immediately a doubt will creep up. What I want you to do is, when you're imagining this goal, when the doubt creeps up, continue to imagine the goal in a way as though you were daydreaming. This is very crucial. Why do we want to focus on this as though we were daydreaming? Because otherwise, the doubtful mind will always ponder on the possibility. Can I achieve this? Can I not achieve this? Forget about all of that. This is just an exercise in daydreaming. You focus on what you want. Now, what's important is, as you keep focusing on that goal, you keep attuning to a different sector, a lifeline that is completely different from what you're experiencing right now. Over time, it will begin to materialize and solidify. Remember, we said that it just takes time for thoughts to materialize into reality. Therefore, we need to stay consistent with our thoughts and our feelings, for long enough until they materialize. Okay? So, do that. Focus on that goal. Visualize it every single morning and every single night before bed. The final goal that you want to move towards. What will naturally happen when you do that is reality will begin to give you glimpses into what it looks like to be in that lifeline. Because you're gonna, so what's typically gonna happen is you're gonna be in between two lifelines. If this is you, this is your current lifeline, you're making a shift into this other lifeline, right? These are separate diagrams. You, now, you, after, right? So let's say this is the other lifeline that you want to move to. And the reason why I do this in a dotted line is because you're in between lifelines, because you're shifting. Now, what's crucial is when you're in between lifelines, life will actually become challenging, okay? Because you're in between. It will become confusing. So chances are, if you feel really, really confused right now, you're going through a tough time, you're actually in between lifelines. No one has ever shifted lifelines without a challenge, without a test, right? When I quit my job to go all in on my business, it was incredibly challenging because that was the end of the old and the beginning of the new. So the moment you begin a new lifeline, it'll be challenging. There's typically 3 phases of switching lifelines. In the beginning, there is the, intentionality, the excitement that you have about shifting. The second phase is the gestation period, where you go through a lot of trials and tribulations, a lot of challenges. And the third phase is when you consolidate yourself and you just keep experiencing growth after growth after growth. And then the cycle repeats itself again when you make the intention to go to a new lifeline. Because what will happen is when you start making the amount of money that you want, inevitably you're going to get bored because it won't be as challenging anymore, right? Ultimately, it's not the money that we want, it's the adventure, the challenge that we want to experience. So this cycle will repeat itself over and over again, but you just have to know there's 3 stages. You make the intention, there's a gestation period, and there's a consolidation period where you experience what you want to experience, okay? So now that you're in phase 2, phase 1/phase 2, I would say you're going to feel an incredible amount of challenge. You're going to feel pushback from your current reality. That's just your old self fighting to survive. The ego just saying, hey, don't risk this, it's safe. Right? Every time you try to shift lifelines, the ego will step in. Your old self will step in and say, hey, this is comfortable. You've known this your whole life. Don't change this. Just hold on. Just hang on. That's the ego's mechanism for keeping you stuck in your comfort zone because it just wants to survive at the expense of a life that is unfulfilled. The worst thing you want is to get to your deathbed and live a life that was unfulfilled because you were afraid. You were afraid of taking the risk because you were a coward. Don't be a coward, friends. Make the shift. Okay, so you want to, during this period, you want to stay consistent in your attitude. Okay, so you want to stay consistent in your attitude. The way to do that is through a method called coordination. Okay, now what's interesting about coordination is there is a phenomenon called the quantum xeno effect in physics. So I want to explain this to you real briefly. So in the 70s, a group of scientists made a bizarre discovery. What they were doing was they were studying radioactive atoms that should naturally decay over time, like a clock that basically ticks forward, but something very, very strange happened. Every time they tried to measure the atom for radioactivity, the decay stopped. Okay, so every time they tried to observe the atom, it was supposed to decay, but when they were looking at it, the decay stopped. This is key, okay? But the moment they looked away, the decay continued. And then they checked it again, and while they were checking it, the decay stopped. This phenomenon in physics, in quantum physics, it's known as the watch pot never boils. Have you ever heard that saying? The watch pot never boils. If you sit there and you watch a pot of water, it'll never boil. Time will basically stand still. So this quantum xeno effect basically gave me insight into why whenever I was trying to make a shift into a reality, the more I kept observing or checking, did it happen yet? Did it happen yet? Did it happen yet? The less it would happen. The less it would happen. I would never see it happen. Has it ever happened to you in your life? Maybe you're trying to close a big business deal or a sales, you're trying to get a sale somewhere, or you're trying to land a big project, but you kept checking. You just keep checking. And the more you check, the more it stands still, nothing happens. But then what happens is you take some time off, you completely forget about it, and all of a sudden it manifests. Every time you insist on your manifestation happening and you try to force it to happen and you keep checking, what happens? It doesn't show up. But the moment you forget about it, you are doing something completely different, all of a sudden it shows up. This is the quantum xeno effect. Quantum xeno effect. And so with this quantum xeno effect, it basically teaches us to balance our efforts with surrender. To complete the shift in lifeline, you need to persist in your internal world as though it's already done. So living from the state of the wish fulfilled. State of wish fulfilled. Neville Goddard talked about this. When you live in the assumption that it's already done, there is no need to check. There's no need to check. When it shows up, it'll be glaringly obvious. So you just put your head down and you focus on the process. So when you have the goal and you're seeing glimpses in your reality of it happening, whether it be challenges or good things, you have to perceive the challenges as part of the process. What do I mean by that? Well, when I made the intention to quit my job to go all in on my business, in May of 2019, my parents were disappointed because that's the month I graduated, and I quit a cushy, comfy job that was lined up for me paying $50K a year with health benefits, everything. I said, no, thank you. I'm not going to be going into this. My parents were flabbergasted because they had paid, supported me through college, paid my tuition, and they were like, why would you do that? It's a guaranteed job to do what? Be on your laptop and make some videos online, and you think you're going to make money like this? They couldn't fathom it, which I don't blame them. So that was the challenge that I was facing, and every single day, my dad would come into my room because I was staying with them, and he'd be like, did you make any sales yet? Did you make any sales yet? Is it working? Oh, it's not. You should go back to your job, right? So that was part of my challenge that I had to perceive as, hey, this is part of the journey. Me failing, not making it, struggling is part of the journey to me becoming that ideal self and experiencing that reality that I want. So I live from the state of the wish fulfilled, and I completely surrendered any kind of near-term results or insisting on results. Now, interestingly, what happened was May 2019 was the worst month in business that I've ever had. We made zero, okay? However, June of 2019, I made my first $6,000 or $8,000 month. July was my first $12,000 month, and August was my first $20,000 month. By Jan of 2020, I started making $100,000 a month. Jan 2020 was $109,000 or $111,000 a month. And in 2020, I made my first $1.2 or $1.3 million a year. So why do I tell you that? I tell you that because whatever you're experiencing right now, okay, whatever it is that you are experiencing right now, it is temporary. The only way you fall back to it, you don't make the shift in lifelines, is if you keep entertaining the thoughts and feelings of your previous lifeline. What do I mean by that? All the fears and negativities that you have, if you give into it, if it makes you quit, right? There's a reason why there's a saying, you can't lose if you don't quit. As long as you persist in the state of the wish fulfilled, you give up any insistence on needing to see material results right now. It will come. It will come in due time. You just need to put one foot in front of the other, focus on the goal, and perceive everything that happens in the process as part of the journey. Because if your attitude becomes such that, hey, this too is part of the journey, you have accepted it as part of the journey, and reality is very neutral. It simply reflects. It's like a mirror. It reflects your attitudes, right? It basically says, oh, you believe this is part of the journey? Well, here's more evidence of how this will be part of the journey. But then the moment you're like, oh, no, this isn't supposed to happen. This is bad, right? When you think this is bad, then reality will show you more instances of why this is bad, okay? The bigger the challenge that you go through right now, the bigger the reward on the other side. I can guarantee you that, okay? If you've been struggling for years and you're watching this video right now, this is your sign to perceive every single challenge that you've gone through over the last year, years, decades, whatever it is, and perceive it as a blessing in disguise for your next evolution, for your next version, because it is coming. And you're going to see how much it propels you, okay? So, I hope this was helpful. thank you for watching. I actually made an in-depth video on the process of shifting your self-view, which I believe is one of the most important things you can do. It's called identity shifting. You shifting your internal world completely or shift your external world. I'll link the video right here at the end of this video, but if you are new to the channel, thank you for watching this. If you could share this with a friend, if this was valuable to you, that really helps us because we're trying to get this message out to as many people as possible. So please feel free to share this with a friend or two if this was valuable to you, and just leave me a comment. Let me know what you thought of this. I always read every single comment. So next video is right here for you to watch on the process of identity shifting. It's going to be a long one. It's in depth. I like to give as much as I can. So watch this here right now, and I'll see you in this next video. Thanks.